As we get closer and closer to the fantasy football playoffs, you need to start having the conversation with yourself and saying, you know what? Who gives me the best chance at winning it all? At the end of the day, if you ain't first, you're last, baby. We are here to win the whole damn thing. And in today's video, I'm bringing you 10 players that you should trade for right now because they are positioned well to be league winners when it matters the most in the fantasy playoffs. Let's start off with the running back position. A couple names here. Number one, James Conner. James Conner, if you drafted him, congratulations. He's been absolutely fantastic this year and has been able to stay healthy. Really great utilization as well. 64% of his team's rushing attempts this year, a 9% target share, and has over 50% of the carries inside the 5-yard line. So you know he's that goal line threat. Currently averaging over 14 PPR points per game. And when it matters, he could be even better for fantasy football purposes. Guys, in week 15, when the fantasy playoff starts, he has the Patriots, which give up the third most points to fantasy running backs. He has the Panthers, which is the best matchup for fantasy running backs. And then in week 17, championship week, which he will take you there, I think, he has the Rams, which are a top 10 matchup in fantasy football. Right now, James Conner has got to be the easiest buy for people who are wanting to win their fantasy championships. He has a great schedule on an offense that is ascending, and he is the workhorse on that team. All right, number two, you're going to have to pay up for this guy, but I do think it's going to be worth it. Breece Hall. Yes, we all love Breece Hall, but I'm telling you, if you pay up for him, he could help you win your championship. He has 68% of his team's rushing attempts, and that number has really started to improve since they made the change at offensive coordinator. He has a 17% target share. A 17% target share. And you might ask yourself, well, won't that change with Davante Adams in town? Maybe, but in week 7, Davante Adams' first game, he had a 25% target share in that game. Ridiculous in PPR formats. And he has almost 70% of this team's rushing attempts inside the 5-yard line. I know Braylon Allen is annoying, but he should not worry you. Breece gets his fair share in an offense that should get better and better. And in the playoffs, guys, check this out, okay? If you face Breece Hall in the playoffs, I'm not sure you're getting to the next round because he's got the Jags in week 15, which are give up the fourth most points to running backs right now when you adjust for schedule. He has the Rams, which are a top 10 matchup, and he has the Bills, which is the second best matchup for your running back. If you can pay up for it, I think it's worth it to get Breece Hall. All right, how about Josh Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt? 60% of his team's rushing attempts, a 9% target share, and 52% of his team's rushing attempts inside the 5-yard line. Very similar to James Conner, actually, when you think about it. But this Packers offense, right now, it could go through a lull. I need you guys to understand where I'm coming from here, okay? If Jordan Love misses time, and I don't know if that's going to be the case with his groin injury, but if he misses time, then we could see a scenario where all Packers weapons in fantasy football have a couple down games, and you will have such a great buy low opportunity on Josh Jacobs, who again is getting the workhorse type of usage. And then in the playoffs, we know Jordan Love is going to be healthy by that time. He gets to face the Seahawks, 9th in points allowed to running backs. Then in week 16, he gets the Saints, who are giving up the 6th most points to fantasy running backs. And then in week 17, he gets the Vikings. I'll give you, that's not a very good matchup, but ultimately the offense will be firing on all cylinders. I still trust him there. Again, if Jordan Love misses time, there could be such a good buy low window here for Josh Jacobs. All right, moving on to the wide receiver position, guys who could be league winners. And I'm going to start off with a name that might be surprising for you guys. Jakobi Meyers. Yeah, I'm serious. I'm not joking when I say that. Jakobi Meyers could be a league winner in fantasy this year. Some very impressive usage since they traded away Davante Adams. Remember, guys, Davante Adams, he had a hamstring in week 3. From week 4 onwards, Jakobi Meyers has been the unquestioned wide receiver 1 on this team. He had a 30% target share in his last 3 games. Weeks 4, 5, and 8, the last 3 games he played, again, over a 30% target share. His route participation is up over 94% in each of those games. And his air yardage, he had a game with 52% of the air yards. He has such healthy usage right now. And when it matters the most, his schedule could pop off in your flex position. He could be a sneaky flex in 12 and 14 team leagues. Look at his fantasy playoffs here. In week 15, the Falcons, top 6 matchup. In week 16, the Jags, which is the best matchup. And in week 17, he's got the Saints, which are a middle of the pack matchup. But think about it. Every single one of those games, the Falcons, the Jags, the Saints, and every single one of those games, the Raiders are going to be down, needing to throw the ball. Jakobi is so reliable. They put him in the slot. They put him outside. I think he has a sneaky chance in deeper formats to be a league winner. All right, moving on from Jakobi Meyers, let's talk about a name that is currently not performing well, DJ Moore. I want to go buy DJ Moore in leagues where I need a solid flex rest of season. Let's change expectations. All right, this is not going to be your wide receiver 1. He's not going to be a wide receiver 2 in smaller formats, but this is one of the better flexes that you can go buy in fantasy football right now for contending teams. We are still waiting on Caleb Williams to show some consistency, but I'm willing to go buy DJ Moore at his current price to bet on that happening over the course of the next 3-4 games before the fantasy playoffs. And we've seen blow-up games for DJ Moore, right? In week 5 versus Carolina, he had 2 touchdowns over 100 yards, 27 PPR points. And after these recent performances, 6 points in week 6, 5 points in week 8, there's definitely a buy low opportunity for DJ Moore. I mean, if you're a DJ Moore owner out there, don't pretend and lie to our face right now that you aren't worried and you aren't willing to trade the guy if someone sends you an offer that you like. But let's check out the fantasy playoffs, because in week 15, he has the Vikings, which is one of the best matchups for your wide receivers, top 3 matchup. The Lions, a top 4 matchup. Those guys are giving up so many points to fantasy wide receivers, getting torched on a weekly basis. And then he has the Seahawks, which are a middle of the pack matchup, but still, I think by that time, if this offense is firing on all cylinders, he could be in a real groove. All right, a player you're going to have to pay up for, but I think it's going to be worth it and hasn't really popped off like he did at the beginning of the year, Malik Neighbors. Guys, Malik Neighbors is the absolute definition of elite usage. Elite player in general, but elite usage. Check this out. A 37% target share on the year. What? A 37% target share for a rookie wide receiver. I don't know if you guys understand how insane that is, how historic that is. That number is mind-blowing. And it makes sense because Malik Neighbors should touch the ball every single time this team drops back, but he has games over 70% of the air yards, multiple games over 50 and 60% of the air yards. He's averaging over 12 targets per game. I know Daniel Jones isn't good, but this is why we wanted to draft Malik Neighbors this offseason, because he was going to drown in opportunities. And with good matchups, we know Neighbors has been unstoppable. Check this out. Stay with me. In week 15, the Ravens. Tell me a single wide receiver you haven't wanted to start against the Ravens recently. Cedric Tillman just torched their ass, all right? The second best matchup for your wide receiver. The Falcons in week 16, a top 6 matchup. The Falcons are definitely going to be able to score, and the Giants are going to have to throw the ball to Malik Neighbors. In week 17, the Colts, who are going to score more points now. I think the reason we aren't seeing as many wide receivers go off against them is because their offense hasn't been very good under Anthony Richardson. With Joe Flacco starting, they're going to score more points, which means the Giants are going to have to be more aggressive through the air. I think Neighbors is going to be on a lot of championship-winning rosters. All right, how about Jayden Reed? One last wide receiver for you before we move on to quarterbacks. Jayden Reed, he has really cooled off after a fiery hot start this year. In the first 6 weeks, Jayden Reed was the wide receiver 4 in fantasy football. He was dominating every week. He was a superstar, getting into the end zone. And then the last 2 weeks, week 7 and 8, he has been really disappointing, averaging 3.5 targets per game. Versus Houston, Jacksonville, both these games under 8 PPR points. And if Jordan Love misses time, there could be an even better buy low opportunity before the fantasy playoffs start. And then when Jordan Love is back, we know Jayden Reed's going to be good. And he has an incredible matchup. Guys, Seahawks in week 15, okay, middle of the pack. Saints in week 16, pretty good matchup. And then in week 17, I want you guys to think about this. Week 17, when the money is on the line, the difference between you being a championship winning team and a second place team is a matchup like the Minnesota freaking Vikings, okay? Jayden Reed versus the Vikings in championship week. Insane opportunity there for you to win your league. We know Jordan Love is able to throw a bunch of touchdowns. We know Jayden Reed's an important part of this offense. I mean, when it matters the most, broke money don't make none here. Let's go get some Jayden Reed on our team. I really think you're going to benefit from it. All right, moving on to the quarterback position. First quarterback I want to go buy, and I've got 3 for you, is Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray this year averaging over 18 points per game. The quarterback 10 on a points per game basis. I think he gets even better. And through 8 games, already 344 rushing yards. If you extrapolate that on the course of an entire season, he's on track for over 730 rushing yards this year. Insane. All right, that's like top 5 quarterback type of rushing numbers. And he's already averaging over 18.5 points per game. Then in the playoffs, his matchups get really intriguing. The Patriots in week 15. And then in week 16, the Panthers. Just last week, Bo Nix went absolute bananas against this team. Every offense is going off against the Carolina Panthers. In week 17, the Rams. So even in the games where the matchups are kind of middle of the pack, for example, the Rams, he has a great opportunity because of game script. So I think Kyler Murray's a great buy low. Speaking of Bo Nix, if he's out there on the waiver wire, he has got to be rostered. And I don't mind riding with him in the playoffs, y'all. Heading into week 8, okay, before week 8, he was top 4 in rushing yards amongst quarterbacks. And then you have to look at the progression he has made over the course of his start of his career. In the first 2 weeks versus weeks 3 to 8, this is a very healthy sample size now. His touchdowns per game go drastically up. He has way less turnovers. In fact, he only has 1 turnover since week 3. And his fantasy points per game from 11.7 almost to 22 per game. He had a career best game in week 8. It was versus Carolina, but check out his playoff matchups, guys. In week 15, the Colts, top 6 matchup for quarterbacks. Then the Chargers, which are middle of the pack. And then in championship week, he faces the Bengals, who are going to be able to put up points. It's going to be a high-scoring affair, and they're going to need Bo Nix to make some magic. I think in deeper formats, Bo Nix might be a league winner. Last quarterback, and I have to say, I am the most bullish on this quarterback for the fantasy playoffs than any other name. That is Dak Prescott. I think he's going to do it again, ladies and gentlemen. I think the Cowboys, remember, last year, the Cowboys were trying to pretend that they were a run-focused team at the beginning of the season. Then in the second half of the season, they went bananas through the air and let Dak just sling the ball all over the field. I think that's what we're going to see again this year. And in the second half of last year, Dak went off in fantasy football. He was a league winner. He and CD were so good. I think he does it again. I really love him rest of season and his playoff schedule. In the playoffs, the Panthers in week 15, the Bucks in week 16. Those are 2 top 3 matchups in fantasy football. And then the Eagles in week 17. Yes, the Eagles are a pretty good secondary as of recently, but we know Cowboys, Eagles, those are always high-scoring affairs. And Dak Prescott pretty much always does good against the Eagles in fantasy football. I definitely think he's a great name to roster. Okay, at the tight end position, guys who can win your league, TJ Hawkinson. In the fantasy playoffs, TJ Hawkinson will be back, right? He'll have multiple weeks under his belt playing and kind of getting back into that rhythm of his game. And in the playoffs, he has the Bears, but after that, he has the Seahawks, which is the second best matchup for your tight end, and the Packers in championship week, which is the 5th best matchup for your tight end. Imagine the Packers versus the Vikings, week 17, a healthy Jordan Love, the NFC North matchup. I mean, that could be so important, and TJ Hawkinson could be a great league-winning tight end. How about David Njoku? This is the truth right now. David Njoku is the truth. All right, in week 15, by the way, he faces the Chiefs. Best matchup for tight ends. It's how you exploit that defense. In week 16, the Bengals. All right, top 5 matchup for your tight end. And then in week 17, the Dolphins. Now, to be fair, the Dolphins just gave up a whole bunch of points to Trey McBride, one of his best weeks of the entire season. So I wouldn't be too worried about that week 17 matchup. All right, well, I wanted to try something a little bit different. I'm very curious to hear your feedback in the comment section. Should this become a weekly video? Should I do this video every week as we prep into the playoffs? Do you like the trade targets? Should I go back to the stashes? I appreciate you for watching the video. Last thing I'll say is do me a favor, hit that like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like the content. And if you don't have a free account on Flock Fantasy yet, go get one for free. Now you got to use the promo code LAND at signup, LAND. And when you do, you'll get access to the My Team Analyzer for free, the trade calculator, and expert consensus rankings all for free. And last thing I promise here, check out the pinned comment. If you want to ask me a fantasy question, there's a link to our website and I'll answer your question on our stream. All love. Let's go get some wins. If you ain't first, you're last, baby. I'm trying to win the whole damn thing. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.